bayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, telas ng sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinagang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang may magdidinig, luman ang araw ng walhagit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo, ang inigaya na pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Great things take time. Often, we need to wait and weather the elements before we can bloom into the best we can be. The past 2 years have been a lesson about patience and perseverance. But every challenge only served to strengthen us, leading to a brighter unfolding and bringing us to the next level of success. From reaching new heights in terms of assets under management, to growing our number of investors and distribution partners, our Philippine peso-denominated funds soared high, with the World Equity Index Feeder Fund hitting the 3 billion peso mark within the first year since its launch. Meanwhile, our dollar-denominated funds also performed well. The Dollar Advantage Fund was even recognized as the best-managed dollar-balanced fund. Committed to helping more Filipinos in their pursuit of prosperity, we also entered into partnerships that will expand our reach and boost our offerings. Through it all, we remained at your side, with enhanced services such as the digitally enabled selling forms and processes, online payment page, and the inclusion of US dollar funds in our online onboarding platform. We also worked hard to keep you informed and engaged. As challenging as the past years may have been, we were fueled by your trust and support, and guided by our purpose. Today, the brighter unfolding leads to the next chapter of our journey together. With more opportunities to thrive, with a clearer path forward, and with a reminder that we can always be better than our best. So go ahead and take the next step in your investing journey. For Sun Life Asset Management will always be here as your partner in prosperity.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Sun Life Prosperity Fund's annual stockholders meeting. The following are present in this afternoon's meeting: the chairman of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds, Mr. Benedicto Sison; the directors of the funds, Mr. Cesar Luis Bate, Dr. Shelito Habito, Attorney Teresita Herbosa, Attorney Aleli Angela Quirino, Mr. Oscar Reyes, Mr. Gerald Bautista, and the fund's president and director, Ms. Valerie Pama. Also joining us in the Zoom conference is our OIC treasurer, Ms. Candy Esteban. We shall now commence the annual stockholders meeting proper. To lead this meeting, please welcome the chairman of the funds, Mr. Benedict Sison, together with the corporate secretary, Attorney Ana Katrina Cabicting Ibero, and Assistant Corporate Secretary, Attorney Frances Iana Canto.
Good afternoon to our fellow directors of the boards, Funds Board officers, and our valuable stockholders. Welcome to the joint annual stockholders meeting of the following Sun Life Prosperity Funds. Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Bond Fund Inc., Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Balance Fund Inc., Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Philippine Equity Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Advantage Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Abundance Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Dynamic Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity GS Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Stock Index Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Wellspring Fund Inc., Sun Life Prosperity World Voyager Fund Inc., and Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Starter Fund Inc. May we call on our Corporate Secretary, Attorney Kate Ibero, to confirm whether we have a quorum.
Good afternoon, everyone. Notices of the meeting were sent to all stockholders of record as of April 30, 2022. The notices were sent electronically, posted on the SLAMC website, and likewise published in newspapers of general circulation. This is to confirm that the holding of this virtual meeting is in accordance with the requirements set forth by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Likewise, the necessary approvals from the boards of directors have been obtained and all requirements have been complied with in order to protect the interests of the stockholders. Notices were sent to the following stockholders of each fund, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. Bond Fund to 13,131 stockholders. Balanced Fund to 36,816 stockholders. Dollar Advantage Fund to 2,602 stockholders. Dollar Abundance Fund to 1,207 stockholders. Dynamic Fund to 2,441 stockholders. GS Fund to 2,369 stockholders. Peso Starter Fund to 32,552 stockholders. Philippine Equity Fund to 51,475 stockholders. Philippine Stock Index Fund to 15,213 stockholders. Dollar Wellspring Fund to 708 stockholders. World Voyager Fund to 1,095 stockholders. And lastly, Dollar Starter Fund to 573 stockholders. These notices were recorded as duly received. The Sun Life Prosperity Funds require a 10% quorum in Section 4, Article 1 of their respective bylaws to hold their annual stockholders meeting. Based on the attendance sheet, as well as the proxies and ballots received before the meeting, each fund has met the 10% quorum requirement with the following details. Bond Fund, 816,192,668 shares, representing 56.86% of the voting stock of the corporation. Balanced Fund, 637,788,284 shares, representing 28.53% of the voting stock of the corporation. Philippine Equity Fund, 378,094,988 shares, representing 17.96% of the voting stock of the corporation. Dollar Advantage Fund, 1,905,099 shares, representing 25.43% of the voting stock of the corporation. Dollar Abundance Fund, 595,563 shares, representing 18.71% of the voting stock of the corporation. Dynamic Fund, 501,389,682 shares, representing 36.96% of the voting stock of the corporation. GS Fund, 13,765,204 shares, representing 15.28% of the voting stock of the corporation. Peso Starter Fund, 18,301,125,866 shares, representing 91.54% of the voting stock of the corporation. Philippine Stock Index Fund, 2,666,228,350 shares, representing 66.76% of the voting stock of the corporation. Dollar Wellspring Fund, 2,845,458 shares, representing 48.77% of the voting stock of the corporation. World Voyager Fund, 2,675,121 shares, representing 44.66% of the voting stock of the corporation. And finally, Dollar Starter Fund, 4,022,429 shares, representing 67.76% of the voting stock of the corporation. We can proceed with the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Kate. We prepared a pre-recorded message addressed to our investors. May we invite the attendees to please watch the video. To our dear investors, a pleasant day to all of you. And thank you for attending this year's joint annual stockholders meeting of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds. They say it's important to look back on your past to see how far you've come. And this is very much applicable in the pandemic situation we are in. Oftentimes, it feels like the journey is lagging, and this is because of the many challenges we are facing. However, there have been important milestones along the way, a clear indication that we are indeed moving forward in our shared goal of prosperity for you and your loved ones. For instance, our Philippine peso-denominated funds showed a strong performance in 2021. The World Equity Index Feeder Fund, the Peso Starter Fund, and the Philippine Equity Fund were particularly impressive, with returns of 23.78%, 1.44%, and 1.78% respectively. Moreover, the World Equity Index Feeder Fund, or WAFE, hit the 3 billion peso mark within the first year since it was launched. This was unexpected, yet a very much welcome achievement. Our dollar-denominated funds likewise delivered. The World Voyager Fund, the Dollar Advantage Fund, and the Dollar Starter Fund had returns of 10.42%, 6.38%, 0.68%, respectively. The Dollar Advantage Fund was even recognized by the CFA Society of the Philippines as the best managed dollar balance fund. Inspired by all these and eager to present you with more choices for your investment portfolio, we will be creating more funds. And at the forefront is the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Voyager Feeder Fund, which is expected to be launched later this 2022. But it's not just about introducing more funds, but also providing a wider access. We align with organizations who have the same vision of helping Filipinos achieve financial freedom. This includes our new distributors, BDO Securities and Investa Financials, both of whom will help us reach more Filipinos and assist them in their investment journey. All these allowed Sun Life Asset Management to reach 179.5 billion pesos in assets under management. This represents an impressive year-on-year growth of 41%. This stands for more Filipino investors making their money work harder for them while fully trusting your Sun Life Asset Management company. However, the biggest achievement is strengthening the ties with you, our treasured investors, and with our key stakeholders such as your financial advisors. We will never tire of engaging and of sharing our knowledge through events such as Bright Talks, Kapihan, and Market Outlook sessions. Moreover, we're always committed to improve your investing experience with us. We will achieve this by further enhancing our digitally enabled selling forms and processes, our online payment page, and our Sun Life mobile app. Dear investors, we are proud to be a partner for prosperity for all 189,000 of you. It is our honor to serve you, and we will always be grateful for the opportunity. No matter what happens, we are here for you. And we look forward to more achievements this 2022. 2022 is shaping up to be another memorable year in our journey together, and we will do our best to sustain this momentum with your brighter goals in mind. Thank you, everyone, and take care. I now turn you over to our OIC Treasurer, Ms. Candy Esteban, to present the review of 2021 operations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to all our shareholders joining us in this afternoon's shareholders meeting. Please note that all the information I am about to present is contained in the respective 20-IS that has been distributed to you. You may also access the link shared in the email invitation to this afternoon's meeting. Let me present to you the full-year financial results of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds. Despite continued uncertainties we experienced in 2021, the second year of the pandemic, I am pleased to share with you that Sun Life Asset Management Company continued to grow despite these difficult times. SLAMC grew at 41.33% on overall AUM in 2021, from 127 billion at the end of 2020 to close to 180 billion at the end of 2021. Today, SLAMC holds 40.43% of the overall mutual fund industry AUM, double the market share we had just 5 years ago. While the mutual funds industry grew 12.83% annually over the last 5 years, SLAMC's AUM outpaced this number, reporting a strong 29.81% increase annually since 2016. Moving on to our next slide, our 11 peso funds continue to take up the biggest chunk of our AUM, now at more than 165 billion, 92% of our total AUM. Our Peso Starter Fund, currently the largest mutual fund company in the Philippines, ended 2021 with an AUM of 127.094 billion. Amidst the low interest rate environment, investors continue to search for products offering stable returns such as the Peso Starter Fund. It recorded a 54% increase year-on-year on AUM. The fund continues to offer consistent yields and fulfills the liquidity needs of our investors. Moving on to our other peso funds, overall, the AUMs of our peso funds stayed steady year-on-year, with equity markets closing the year about flat to the end of 2020 and on the brink of rising interest rates. At the same time, we saw a strong growth in the Sun Life Prosperity World Equity Index Feeder Fund, which allows our clients to invest globally using their Philippine pesos. The next slide shows the AUMs of our 5 Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Funds. Overall, our dollar funds comprise 8% of our total portfolio, amounting to 283.6 million US dollars, or about 14.5 billion pesos. This was led by the doubling of the AUM of the Dollar Starter Fund to now at $185.7 million, or around 9.5 billion pesos. Similar to our Peso Starter Fund, the Dollar Starter Fund provides liquidity and stability for our investors and aims to provide potentially better returns than your regular bank deposit products. Amongst all the US dollar non-starter funds, the World Voyagers Fund AUM grew the fastest, growing by 114% from the strong sales and excellent market performance for the year. We saw good AUM growth on account of market performance in our equity funds, as we saw global equities performing in 2021. The MSCI World Index grew by more than 20% in 2021. We see this impact for our Dollar Advantage Fund as well, which is mainly comprised of equities. On the other hand, we saw the Dollar Abundance and the Dollar Wellspring funds drop in AUM slightly. These funds are comprised mainly of bond products, which are negatively impacted by rising inflation and rising interest rates. Our next two slides will highlight the net asset values per share of our various funds. Returns in the peso-denominated funds were mixed. The equities market continued to be challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic, with the local index dropping by 0.24% on a year-on-year basis. Despite this, our local equity-linked funds fared better than the local bourse. Bond yields started rising on the back of global yields and local inflation, which impacted our fixed income funds overall. As a result, we saw a slight drop in our GS fund and bond fund NAVs. The following slide summarizes the overall NAV impact of our dollar funds in 2021. Starting at the left side of your screen, the Dollar Starter Fund continues to yield better than the regular dollar CASA and TD product, yielding 0.68% annually for our investors. At the same time, as mentioned earlier, global equities also continued to perform well in 2021, yielding positive results for our Dollar Advantage and World Voyager Fund. On the global fixed income performance, similar to local bonds, rising inflation also took a toll on the fixed income funds. As a result, you will note that the Dollar Abundance Fund yielded a drop of 89 basis points year on year. The Dollar Wellspring Fund NAV is lower by 35 basis points, but this does not take into consideration the dividends released in the third quarter of 2021. Including the dividends, the overall return of that fund is at 1.38%. In terms of number of investors, our total number of investors continues to grow year on year, ending the year at over 189,000 clients, translating to a more than 8.13% increase year on year. Similar to our AUM, we consistently see a strong growth in our investor base with a 5-year CAGR of 15.9%. And similar to the previous years as well, the three funds which had the highest percentage growth in accounts were the Dollar and Peso Starter Fund and the World Voyager Fund. We also continue to see investors taking advantage to open accounts in the World Equity Index Feeder Fund, one of our unitized mutual funds, to gain access to global equities. Moving on to the top grossing funds in terms of gross sales, as you saw in our strong AUM growth, we saw significant gross sales coming into our liquidity funds. The Peso and Dollar Starter Funds, these two funds saw combined subscriptions of more than 121 billion pesos in 2021. For Peso funds, we also saw strong subscriptions in the World Equity Index Feeder Funds, one of our unitized funds, as well as the Index Fund, which is linked to the local index. On the Dollar Fund side, our two equity-laced funds posted strong subscription levels, the World Voyager and Dollar Advantage Fund. Before I close, I'd like to reiterate that SLAMC continues to stay ahead in the mutual funds industry. SLAMC's distribution network covers the span of more than 2,400 financial advisors and 19 bank and broker partners. SLAMC continues to provide you with a comprehensive suite of mutual funds covering a wide array of needs, and we also continue to focus on bringing you new and innovative products. SLAMC continues to be the largest non-bank affiliated asset management company in the Philippines today, with more than 40% market share. We are thankful for your continued trust in the company. Thank you very much, dear investors, and I hope you can stay for the rest of the meeting to learn more about your investments. Good day.
Thank you, Candy. The next item is the fund performance in 2021. We will be presenting a pre-recorded video which has been prepared by our fund managers.
A year of recovery. This is how financial markets remember 2021, as the COVID-19 situation improved and economies started to reopen. And while geopolitical tensions and increasing inflation spurred new headwinds, the Sun Life Prosperity Funds navigated uncertainties and upheld its performance, delivering strong investment outcomes for its investors. Demonstrating our commitment to being your partner for prosperity. Peso Fixed Income Funds. Fixed income funds weathered an increasing rate environment. Still, the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund managed to provide stable returns for investors. Meanwhile, the Sun Life Prosperity GS Fund and the Sun Life Prosperity Bond Fund, despite ending with negative returns for the year, shielded investors from the full effect of the upward adjustment in interest rates. Dollar Fixed Income Funds. The Dollar Fixed Income Funds also faced challenges throughout 2021. However, the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Starter Fund continued to provide superior returns compared to traditional time deposit rates. As for the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Abundance Fund, interest accrual from the securities it held helped its performance during a year of rising interest rates. Peso Balanced and Equity-Laced Funds. The Philippine stock market saw record capital raising activities. However, in spite of the rebound in corporate earnings, the performance of the index remained uneventful as the market was dictated by pandemic-related events. With this, Sun Life Asset Management's equity-laced peso funds posted modest returns in 2021. The Sun Life Prosperity Dynamic Fund Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Equity Fund and the Sun Life Prosperity Balanced Fund all delivered stronger returns compared to their benchmarks. And the Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Stock Index Fund performed in line with the PSEI. Dollar balanced and equity-laced funds. Global stock markets in 2021 turned in a strong performance. These positive developments gave impressive returns for the first year of the Sun Life Prosperity World Equity Index Feeder Fund and Sun Life Prosperity World Voyager Fund. The Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Advantage Fund also registered favorable returns, as well as the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Wellspring Fund. This 2022, what do we foresee? We see an extended U-shaped type of recovery for the Philippine economy. We see Bangko Sentral policy rates below pre-pandemic levels to support economic recovery. However, we also see rising global inflation due to higher crude oil prices caused by the geopolitical tension between Russia and Ukraine. We also see potential interest rate hikes as global central banks strive to manage the risks of recession. Despite these headwinds, we see much opportunity in global equities moving forward. For the local financial markets, bond yields may continue to rise. For local equities, there is still much value in investing in local stocks. With the Philippine Stock Exchange trading below its 5-year average PE multiple, there are opportunities for long-term equity investing. Through all these, Sun Life Asset Management will remain at your side as the next chapter of your investing journey unfolds. We will be here to provide superior risk-adjusted returns over the long term. We will combine growth and value investing to seek outperformance. With a blend of top-down strategic views and bottom-up analysis, we will adhere to a methodical security selection process combined with a robust asset allocation framework to ensure consistent performance across all our funds. As the world continues to move forward, we remain your partner for prosperity. You have our commitment. We are Sun Life Asset Management.
A market outlook forum will be held immediately after the annual meeting. We will anticipate later a more detailed discussion with you on fund performance and market outlook.
We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the election of the members of the Board of Directors for the 2022-2023 term. I turn you over to Attorney Kate Ibero so she could explain our voting procedure and introduce the nominees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both the voting procedure and the resumes of our nominees for directors have been stated in the SEC Form 20-IS, and such form was sent to our stockholders of record. Attorney Yani, the rules and procedures, please.
Gladly, Attorney Kate. May I direct your attention to the rules and procedures as displayed on the screen. Preliminary results of votes on proxies and ballots submitted and validated as of July 8, 2022, shall be provided during the meeting. The final results shall be reflected in the minutes of the meeting. Stockholders who registered in this meeting or notified the corporate secretary via email of their intention to participate in this meeting through remote communication may email their questions, comments, clarifications, and suggestions to sunlifefunds@sunlife.com. Throughout the duration of the meeting, investors may submit their questions using the Q&A button on your screen. Eligible stockholders may cast their votes through the poll function of Zoom. Investors will be given ample time to cast their votes. Those who have submitted their proxies or ballots are no longer required to cast their votes through the poll function of Zoom. I repeat, those who have submitted their proxies or ballots are no longer required to cast their votes through the poll function of Zoom. Finally, votes flashed on the screen are preliminary results of the proxies and ballots obtained. Votes cast during the meeting shall be included in the final tabulation of votes to be made available after the meeting proper.
Thank you, Attorney Yani. We will now flash the pictures and names of our nominees on the screen. Our nominees are Mr. Benedicto C. Sison, Ms. Valerie N. Pama, Mr. Gerald L. Bautista, Mr. Cesar Luis F. Bate, Independent Director, Dr. Shelito F. Habito, Independent Director, Attorney Teresita J. Herbosa, Independent Director, Attorney Aleli Angela G. Quirino, Independent Director, Mr. Oscar S. Reyes, Independent Director, kindly prepare to vote. A pop-out window will appear on your screen, providing you the nominees to be elected. You can now start by clicking in favor of your nominees, then submit. Please be reminded that we have 5 nominees for each fund, except for the Peso Starter Fund, where we have 6 nominees. Mr. Chairman, it appears we cannot push through with the election of directors for certain funds as the majority of their respective outstanding capital stock was not attained. Attorney Yanni, please provide us with the results.
Sure, Attorney Kate. On the screen, the following funds did not meet the required number of votes: Balanced Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dynamic Fund, GS Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, and World Voyager Fund.
Attorney Kate, so what do you propose that we do?
Mr. Chair, I propose that we continue to solicit proxies until we get the required 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. We will also set the continuation of this meeting on September 9, 2022, Friday at 9 a.m. via Zoom. Those who have attended today's meeting and have cast their votes shall no longer be required to attend said continuation meeting. In the meantime, the present boards of directors for the said funds will continue to serve as such until their successors are elected and duly qualified.
All right. Since we lack the necessary majority of the outstanding capital stock to elect our directors for the boards of the funds mentioned by the corporate secretary, the present boards of directors will continue to serve as such until their successors are elected and duly qualified. I urge management to exert all efforts to solicit proxies. Are there companies that have met the 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock in attendance and which can elect a new set of directors?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Attorney Yanni, kindly provide us with the voting results.
The following funds met the required number of votes: Bond Fund, Peso Starter Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, and Dollar Starter Fund.
Thank you, Attorney Yanni. For that matter, Attorney Kate, do we have a resolution to make the election of the board of directors for the said funds official?
Yes, sir. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 1-2022, which reads, Resolved that the following directors have been elected by the stockholders at this meeting to serve as directors of the funds for the 2022 to 2023 term. For the Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Bond Fund, Inc., for Sun Life Philippine Stock Index Fund, Inc., Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund, Inc., and Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Starter Fund, Inc.
Thank you, Attorney Kate. We now move on to the approval of the minutes of the stockholders' previous meetings in 2021. Attorney Kate, let us proceed with the voting.
To our dear stockholders, you will see the pop-out window on your screen on the approval of the minutes. Please click for or against, then submit. Mr. Chair, we have gathered sufficient votes for all the funds to approve this item. Attorney Yanni, kindly provide us the voting results.
This item requires the approval of a majority of the quorum of the voting stock of the funds. All the funds met the required number of votes, namely Bond Fund, Balanced Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dynamic Fund, GS Fund, Peso Starter Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, World Voyager Fund, and Dollar Starter Fund.
Thank you, Attorney Kate and Attorney Yanni. Do we have a resolution to approve the minutes of the 2021 stockholders meetings?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 2-2022, which reads, Resolved to approve the minutes of the 2021 stockholders meeting held on July 14, 2021, and the continuation meeting held on September 10, 2021, all via Zoom webinar.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the confirmation and ratification of all acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and Officers of the previous year. Attorney Kate, may we proceed with the voting?
Gladly, Mr. Chair. Stockholders, a pop-out window will now appear on your screen for the item on confirmation and ratification of acts. Kindly click for or against, then submit. Mr. Chair, we have gathered sufficient votes from all the funds to approve the item. Attorney Yanni, please provide us with the results.
The item requires the approval of a majority of the quorum of the voting stock of the funds. All the funds met the required number of votes. Bond Fund, Balanced Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dynamic Fund, GS Fund, Peso Starter Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, World Voyager Fund, and Dollar Starter Fund.
Do we have a resolution to approve the confirmation and ratification of all acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and Officers of the previous year?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 3-2022, which reads, Resolved to approve, confirm, and ratify all acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and Officers of the previous year.
The next item on our agenda is the appointment of the external auditor. May we hear from our OIC treasurer on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the endorsement of the Audit and Compliance Committees of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds, we would like to recommend to the stockholders the reappointment of Navarro Ampere and Company, Deloitte Touche Tohmatsu as external auditor. Representatives of Deloitte are here with us today in the meeting.
Attorney Kate, may we proceed with the voting?
My pleasure, Mr. Chair. For the approval of the external auditor Navarro Ampere and Company, Deloitte Touche Tohmatsu, please direct your attention to the poll on your screen. Please click for or against, then submit. Mr. Chair, we have gathered sufficient votes from all the funds to approve this item. Attorney Yanni, the results, please.
Sure, Attorney Kate. The item requires approval of a majority of the quorum of the voting stock of the funds. All the funds met the required number of votes. Bond Fund, Balanced Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dynamic Fund, GS Fund, Peso Starter Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, World Voyager Fund, and Dollar Starter Fund.
Attorney Kate, do we have a resolution to approve the reappointment of Navarro, Ampere and Company, Deloitte Touche Tomatsu as external auditor for 2022?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 4-2022, which reads, Resolved to approve the reappointment of Navarro, Ampere and Company, Deloitte Touche Tomatsu as external auditor for the year 2022.
As to the other matters listed in the agenda, Attorney Kate, I understand we have a number of items for approval. Kindly provide us the details of the first item.
Mr. Chair, before I start with the first item on the agenda, I would like to remind the stockholders to take note of the funds to which the amendments pertain to. Said information is provided on top portion of your screen. The first item on the other matters agenda requires the approval of at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock for the following funds. This is for the amendment of Article 6 of the Articles of Incorporation to increase the number of directors to 6. A pop-out window will now appear on your screen for this item. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the second item.
Mr. Chair, the second item on the agenda requires the approval of at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 3 of the Articles of Incorporation on the principal office address, a Sun Life Center, Bonifacio Global City, Taguig City. A pop-out window will now appear on your screen for this item. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the third item.
Mr. Chair, the third item on the agenda requires the approval of at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, the primary purpose, and Article 2, Paragraph 1, and Paragraph 6, secondary purpose, of the Articles of Incorporation to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. A pop-out window will now appear on your screen for this item. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the fourth item.
Mr. Chair, the fourth item on the agenda requires the approval of at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Paragraph 9 of the Articles of Incorporation from the Corporation Law to Revised Corporation Code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the fifth item.
Mr. Chair, the fifth item on the agenda requires the approval of at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 7 of the Articles of Incorporation to align with the conditions for the redemption of shares by a shareholder with the Investment Company Act, its implementing rules and regulations, and other applicable issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the sixth item.
Mr. Chair, the sixth item on the agenda requires the approval of at least two-thirds of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 8 of the Articles of Incorporation to add a description of the features of the company shares. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the seventh item.
Mr. Chair, the seventh item requires approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Section 1, Article 1 of the bylaws on the date and time of the annual stockholders meeting. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the eighth item.
Mr. Chair, the eighth item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the delegation of power to amend Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 of the bylaws to the Board of Directors. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the ninth item.
Mr. Chair, the ninth item requires approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 1, Sections 1 and 2 of the bylaws to allow for the holding of the stockholders meeting via remote communication, and Section 2 to align with Section 49 of the revised Corporation Code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 10th item.
Mr. Chair, the 10th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 1, Section 6 of the bylaws to provide for the use of remote communication or in absentia in the conduct of regular and special stockholders meetings and on the manner of voting in accordance with the revised Corporation Code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 11th item.
Mr. Chair, the 11th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 1 of the bylaws to include the requirement that at least 20% of the Board of Directors must be composed of independent directors. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 12th item.
Mr. Chair, the 12th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 4, Section 1 of the bylaws to ensure compliance with the applicable rules on the composition of committees, changing or discharging of its members, and filling in vacancies. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 13th item.
Mr. Chair, the 13th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 4, Section 2 of the bylaws on the deletion of the advisory board. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 14th item.
Mr. Chair, the 14th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 6, Section 1B of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 15th item.
Mr. Chair, the 15th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 6, Section 2 of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 16th item.
Mr. Chair, the 16th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 7, Section 3 of the bylaws to refer to the applicable section of the revised Corporation Code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 17th item.
Mr. Chair, the 17th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 7, Section 6 of the bylaws to align with the period specified in the revised Corporation Code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 18th item.
Mr. Chair, the 18th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 8, Section 1 of the bylaws to clarify that the prospectus is as filed with and approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 19th item.
Mr. Chair, the 19th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 8, Sections 2A, B, and C of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 20th item.
Mr. Chair, the 20th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 9, Section 1 of the bylaws to clarify that the prospectus is as filed with and approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 21st item.
Mr. Chair, the 21st item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 10, Section 1 of the bylaws to align with the grounds for suspension under the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 22nd item.
Mr. Chair, the 22nd item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 10, Section 2 of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 23rd item.
Mr. Chair, the 23rd item requires approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 11, Section 1 of the bylaws to align the definition of a custodian with the definition and qualifications provided by the Investment Company Act and other applicable issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 24th item.
Mr. Chair, the 24th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 11, Section 2 of the bylaws to align it with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations on the outsourcing or delegation of functions of the custodian. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 25th item.
Mr. Chair, the 25th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 11, Section 3 to align it with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations, and the Securities Regulation Code on the qualifications and appointment of an auditor. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 26th item.
Mr. Chair, the 26th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 14, Section 1 of the bylaws to align with the applicable provision of the revised Corporation Code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 27th item.
Mr. Chair, the 27th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 2 of the bylaws to align the period for the notice of meeting of the directors with the revised corporation code. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 28th item.
Mr. Chair, the 28th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 4 of the bylaws to expressly state that directors are prohibited from participating in the determination of their own per diems or compensation. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 29th item.
Mr. Chair, the 29th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 5 of the bylaws to align with the revised corporation code on the vacancies in the board of directors. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 30th item.
Mr. Chair, the 30th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 2 of the bylaws to include the requirement that the committee must have at least one member who is an independent director in compliance with the Securities Regulation Code and its implementing rules and regulations. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 31st item.
Mr. Chair, the 31st item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 6 of the bylaws to expressly state that directors are prohibited from participating in the determination of their per diems or compensation. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 32nd item.
Mr. Chair, the 32nd item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 1, Section 3 of the bylaws to align the notice period for stockholders meeting with the issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission and to allow for the sending of notices electronically. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 33rd item.
Mr. Chair, the 33rd item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 2, Section 7 of the bylaws to align with the revised corporation code on the vacancies in the board of directors. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 34th item.
Mr. Chair, the 34th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 3, Sections 1 and 6 of the bylaws in relation to the election of a compliance officer as one of the corporate officers. You may now cast your vote.
Let us now proceed with the 35th item.
Mr. Chair, the 35th item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. This pertains to the amendment of Article 1, Section 3 of the bylaws to allow for sending of notices electronically. You may now cast your vote. Mr. Chair, this is the last item, which is for the approval of the stockholders.
Attorney Kate, do we have the necessary numbers to have the 35 items approved?
Mr. Chair, for the following fund corporations, we have reached the requirement of 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. In accordance with the instructions in the proxy and ballot forms, all the votes are cast in favor of the items submitted for the approval of the stockholders.
We thank our stockholders for approving our proposed amendments to the bylaws.
Mr. Chair, for the following fund corporations, we have reached the requirement of 2/3 vote of the outstanding capital stock. In accordance with the instructions in the proxy and ballot forms, all the votes are cast in favor of the items submitted for the approval of the stockholders.
We thank our stockholders for approving our proposed amendments to the Articles of Incorporation. Attorney Kate, do we have the corresponding resolutions to approve the items on the amendment of bylaws?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have the following Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM resolutions, which Attorney Yanni will go over one by one.
Thank you, Attorney Kate. The following resolutions, as flashed on the screen, correspond to the matters approved by the stockholders of the Peso Starter, Dollar Starter, and Index Funds. Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM Resolution Number 5-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2 and Article 2, Paragraph 1 and Paragraph 6 of the Articles of Incorporation to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM Resolution Number 6-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Paragraph 9 of the Articles of Incorporation in relation to the change in the use of corporation law to the revised Corporation Code. Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM Resolution Number 7-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 7 of the Articles of Incorporation in relation to the conditions for the redemption of shares by a shareholder to align with the Investment Company Act, its implementing rules and regulations, and other applicable issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM Resolution Number 8-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 8 of the Articles of Incorporation in relation to adding a description of the features of the company's shares. Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM Resolution Number 9-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendments of Article 1, Sections 1 and 2 of the bylaws in relation to allowing the holding of the stockholders' meeting via remote communication, and Section 2 to align with the revised Corporation Code. Sun Life Prosperity Funds ASHM Resolution Number 10-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 1, Section 6 of the bylaws in relation to the use of remote communication or in absentia in the conduct of regular and special stockholders meetings and on the manner of voting in accordance with the revised corporation code. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 11-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 1 of the bylaws in relation to the inclusion of the requirement that at least 20% of the board of directors must be composed of independent directors. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 12-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 4, Section 1 of the bylaws in relation to complying with applicable rules on the composition of committees, changing or discharging of its members, and filling in of vacancies. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 13-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 4, Section 2 of the bylaws in relation to the deletion of the advisory board. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 14-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 6, Section 1 of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 15-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 6, Section 2 of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 16-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 7, Section 3 of the bylaws in order to refer to the applicable section of the revised corporation code. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 17-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 7, Section 6 of the bylaws to align with the period specified in the revised corporation code. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 18-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 8, Section 1 of the bylaws to clarify that the prospectus is as filed with and approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 19-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 8, Sections 2, A, B, and C of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 20-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 9, Section 1 of the bylaws to clarify that the prospectus is as filed with and approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 21-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 10, Section 1 of the bylaws to align with their grounds for suspension under the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 22-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 10, Section 2 of the bylaws to align with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 23-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 11, Section 1 of the bylaws to align the definition of a custodian with the definition and qualifications provided by the Investment Company Act and other applicable issuance of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 24-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 11, Section 2 of the bylaws to align it with Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations on outsourcing or delegation of functions of the custodian. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 25-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 11, Section 3 to align it with the Investment Company Act and its implementing rules and regulations and the Securities Regulation Code on the qualifications and appointment of an auditor. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 26-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 14, Section 1 of the bylaws to align with applicable provisions of the revised corporation code. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 27-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 2 of the bylaws to align the period for the notice of meeting of the directors with the revised corporation code. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 28-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 4 of the bylaws to expressly state that directors are prohibited from participating in the determination of their own per diems or compensation. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 29-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 5 of the bylaws to align with the revised corporation code on the vacancies in the board of directors. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 30-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 2 of the bylaws to include the requirement that the committee must have at least one member who is an independent director in compliance with the Securities Regulation Code and its implementing rules and regulations. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 31-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 6 of the bylaws to expressly state that directors are prohibited from participating in the determination of their per diems or compensation. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 32-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 1, Section 3 of the bylaws to align the notice period for stockholders' meetings with the issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission and to allow for the sending of the notices electronically. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 33-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 2, Section 7 of the bylaws to align with the revised corporation code on the vacancies in the board of directors. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 34-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 3, Sections 1 and 6 of the bylaws in relation to the election of a compliance officer as one of the corporate officers. Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 35-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendment of Article 1, Section 3 of the bylaws to allow for sending of notices electronically. And finally, Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 36-2022, which reads, resolved to approve the amendments of Article 6 of the Articles of Incorporation to increase the number of directors to 6.
Thank you, Attorney Yani. Attorney Kate, are there matters which did not meet the necessary numbers to have them approved?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The following funds were not able to meet the required two-thirds vote of the outstanding capital stock for the approval of the amendments of the Articles of Incorporation of the following funds. We were likewise unable to reach the requirement of 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock for the approval of the amendment of the bylaws of the following funds.
So, Attorney Kate, what do you propose that we do?
Mr. Chair, I propose that we continue to solicit proxies such that we get the required two-thirds and 50% plus 1 votes of the outstanding capital stock. We will also set the continuation of the meeting on September 9, 2022, Friday at 9 a.m. via Zoom webinar. Those who have attended today's meeting and cast their votes shall no longer be required to attend said continuation meeting.
All right. Since we lack the necessary number of votes for the outstanding capital stock to have the proposals approved, we will resubmit these matters to the stockholders during their continuation meeting on September 9, 2022. I urge management to exert all efforts to solicit proxies. So let us now open the floor to entertain questions from the stockholders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have gathered the questions from our stockholders, and I have with me the 4 most asked questions. For our first question, what developments has Lancy implemented for its investors since the last annual stockholders meeting?
Thank you, Moy. Allow me to answer this question. In the past year, Slamsy went all out to deliver for our investors. In fact, during the start of 2021, the team endeavored to provide our investors a more pleasant investing journey by launching digitally enabled selling forms and processes, or DES for short. The DES forms are fillable, interactive versions of SLAMC's client forms, which can be digitally accomplished and submitted. With these, there is no need for hard copy submissions to our client service centers. More than anything, this new process enables SLAMC to better serve those who are based in areas far from our major service centers nationwide. This encouraged more Filipinos to try investing. We then launched the online payment page where existing clients can add to their funds through our website. To further improve the experience, Slamcy also partnered with Paynamics as an additional payment option in the online payment page. Also, Slamcy enhanced its online application platform to make its US dollar funds available. With this, dollar holders were able to jumpstart their investment journey from the comfort of their own homes, making their US dollars work harder for them without the need to fill out any and submit any paper form. We also strive to help more Filipinos achieve prosperity by entering into partnerships that will expand our distribution network and boost our offerings. And we are pleased to share that Investa Financial and BDO Securities are now part of our distribution channel. And finally, just this year, we have reduced the required amounts for clients to invest using US dollars. Global investing is not only more affordable, but is now more inclusive.
Thank you, Mr. Season. The next question is, for the past few months and ever since the various events such as the Russia-Ukraine conflict has started and inflation rising, what have you observed from and your plans on the flows in the Sun Life Prosperity Funds?
Hi, Moy. I can take that question. It's actually a very good question because just this morning we also had our board meetings with our board of directors, and it was a similar question raised by one of our directors. And I'm glad to hear that our investors are interested in knowing about the general movement in our funds. So yes, this has been a very challenging year, both in the local and the global markets, as we have seen elevated volatilities in the fixed income and the equity markets. But for SLAMC, what we have seen is that despite all of these volatilities, we continue to see flows coming into our peso and our dollar starter funds, which is similar to what I've just shared earlier in my report. These are our liquidity funds. So these funds, despite all of the volatilities, they've continued to provide us decent returns, and they're comparable or even higher than your regular bank deposit products, and they're very consistent. So it's quite good because you can expect consistency when you go into these two funds. We expect the volatility continue in the next coming months. So we're really observing these because we want our funds to take advantage of higher yielding assets as soon as the interest rate environment really suits our position. The other thing that we have been seeing, just to share with our investors, is that we've also seen increased flows in our equity and our index funds this year, as long-term investors are really taking advantage now of the lower PSEI levels. They do want to capitalize on the reopening and the growth in the local markets because, as you know, the local economy has really been opening up in the last 3 months, and these are growth stories that we are looking forward to in the next 6 months of this year. So for long-term investors, it may be a good time to take advantage of lower prices of equities.
Hey, thank you for that, Mrs. Esteban. For our next question, what can we look forward to from SLAMC in the next coming months or years?
Yeah. Hi, Moy. Thank you for this question. And if you may, I would like to answer this question in 3 P's. That's process, placement, and products. So number 1, process. As more transactions move online to the new normal, obviously, SLAMC recognized the need to beef up our payment capabilities We do notice that around 80 to 90% of our process touch points are now online. Hence, investors can expect from us to continuously improve our services and elevate customer experience in the digital space. We have several initiatives, enhancements, and systems upgrade in place, and consequently, we expect these process developments will improve clients a more delightful client experience. Now, number two, on placements, we've expanded our online payment gateways and platforms, as we heard a while ago from the question and answer by Mr. Season. We will explore more strategic partnerships with several financial institutions, increase more payment avenues to make investing with Slamsi more accessible and convenient. So do wait for that. Engagements and discussions with big service providers are ongoing to welcome our future clients. Now, lastly, on products, there are several new offerings in the pipeline, which includes the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Voyager Feeder Fund, which will enable clients to invest into our top performing World Voyager Fund using Philippine pesos. Also, we have an income paying fund or dividend paying funds in the pipeline. We will keep clients posted for any developments regarding our product launches for these new funds. In the meantime, we will continue to engage with our valued shareholders, and we endeavor to sustain vis-a-vis to the suite of funds that we have that will complement our clients' investment portfolio.
Hey, thank you for that, Mr. Bautista. And for our final question, what investment advice can you give to investors now, given the market conditions?
Hi, Moy. I can take this question. So, over the past few months, both local and global markets have been facing headwinds due to rising inflation, the weakening peso versus the dollar, rate hikes from the central banks, global recession risks, and geopolitical tensions brought about by the war between Russia and Ukraine. These headlines can make it tempting for some investors to succumb to panic and sell. But be assured that SLAMC is here to guide you through. First, we suggest that you remain calm and consult your Sun Life Mutual Fund advisor first for his or her guidance on the next steps you may take for your investment portfolio. You may also consider assessing your risk tolerance before you add or redeem your investments. If you think your needs have become more immediate and you think it's best to be defensive during these times, you may reallocate your investments to our peso and dollar starter funds. If you still require higher returns for your goals and you think you can still absorb the volatility in the market, you may slowly add to your equity-laced funds. This way, you can take advantage of our economy's gradual reopening story and capitalize on potential capital growth. We encourage you to remain patient but smart when it comes to managing your investment portfolio. You may consider doing asset allocation by investing in equity and fixed income funds, whether locally or globally, in order to diversify your portfolio and minimize its overall volatility. Make sure to also rebalance every time your priorities change so that your investments remain aligned to your long-term financial goals. More details about the market will be discussed during the Market Outlook Forum with the fund managers of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds after this annual stockholders meeting proper.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pama. We would like to remind everyone, if you have questions that you would like to ask our directors and our officers, you may send those using the Q&A button on the lower portion of your screen. Alternatively, you may also send an email to sunlifefunds@sunlife.com so that we may address your concerns. With that, I turn over the floor again to the chairman of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds.
Thank you, Moy, and of course, thank you, stockholders, for your questions. Although this ends our Q&A, we continue to invite our stockholders to email your questions, comments, clarifications, and suggestions to sunlifefunds@sunlife.com. sunlife.com. Our team will respond accordingly. As mentioned earlier, we will hold a Market Outlook Forum after we officially adjourn this annual stockholders meeting. We encourage you to participate in the said forum, especially those who wish to ask questions about the fund's performance video presentation earlier. Now, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion.
So it has been moved and seconded. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much to all of you who have attended this joint annual stockholders meeting of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds.